You've landed at the edge of what medicine has known and what it's becoming. I'm Dr. Richard Rocker, and this is the Integrative Continuum, a podcast bridging biology, energy, and human potential. In each episode, we explore how quantum biology, frequency medicine, and ancient healing systems are transforming our understanding of health. This is where mitochondria meet meaning and blood work meets bioenergetics. Subscribe now and join me on the frontier of integrative healing, where science and soul are no longer separate. Welcome back to the Integrative Continuum podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Richard Rocker, and as always, I stand by the truth as I know it and as I learn it. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Nikki Wan. Nikki Wan is a nutritional therapist with a diploma in nutritional therapy and a member of the Nutritional Therapists of Ireland. She specializes in menstrual cycle health, fertility, and pregnancy nutrition. And since 2022, she has been supporting individuals and couples who are navigating fertility and reproductive health challenges. Her approach combines evidence-based nutrition with a collaborative, client-centered style of care, helping people better understand the relationship between nutrition, hormones, the gut, and reproductive health. Nikki has a particular interest in the gut microbiome and its profound influence on hormonal balance, menstrual cycle regulation, fertility, and pregnancy. This interest has also led her to as educator and territory manager with Activated Probiotics, a specialist live bacteria supplement company focused on evidence-based, condition-specific probiotic formulations. In her own clinical work, Nikki incorporates high-quality, evidence-informed products, including activated probiotics, as part of a broader personalized approach to health. Activated Probiotics is a practitioner-focused company developing precision live bacteria supplements, backed by scientific research on the human microbiome. Their formulations use targeted bacterial strains at doses supported by clinical trials with advanced manufacturing technology, designed to protect bacterial viability, including microencapsulation technology, flow symmetry enumeration, and pharmaceutical-grade packaging. In today's conversation, we'll be exploring the fascinating connection between the gut microbiome, hormonal health, fertility, menstrual cycle function, pregnancy, and systemic well-being. We'll also discuss why the microbiome is just not a digestive topic, but a whole body regulatory system influencing immunity, inflammation, metabolism, hormones, and reductive health. Reproductive health. Reproductive health. Let's go the third time. So, Nikki Wan, welcome to the Integrative Continuum.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Rocker. That is such an amazing introduction. Thank you.
Oh, lovely to have you. Excellent.
Yeah. So we have lots to cover in that intro. Wow.
Yes, yeah, put you on the spot now, huh? Listen, we're going to learn a little bit about you, Nikki, and then we'll get into the company, Activated Probiotics. So for
Sure.
listeners who may not know you yet, can you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit more about your background, what led you into nutritional therapy, fertility, menstrual cycle health,
Yeah.
pregnancy, nutrition, kind of that whole era?
Wow. Okay. So a snapshot of it is I actually came from an event management and kind of festivals background. So for 20 years, I worked in that space. And because I was in that space of music and on the go and all that kind of stuff, I literally burnt myself out. So there was one day where I ended up just going on a solo holiday very last minute because I was so burnt out. And I ended up going to this beautiful Pilates yoga retreat in Fuerteventura. And it was the most stunning place you've ever seen. It was unbelievable. And the Pilates instructor there actually was also the nutritionist, and she did all of the plant-based foods in the retreat as well. So she tailored the menus and everything. And I kind of looked at her and I was like, do you know what? I want to be her when I grow up, even though I was a fully grown lady at this time, but still. So I looked at her and I was like, do you know what? She's inspired me. So I came home. I looked up, somewhere to study nutrition, and I also did my Pilates instructor course. I wasn't very good at the Pilates instruction though. I'm not very coordinated, as I so discovered. So that kind of went by the wayside. But yes, I went on and I did with IINH, I did a certification in coaching. And then literally after the first class, I was hooked. I was like, that's it. This is what I want to do. Then went on to do the nutritional therapy course. And yeah, have been absolutely just have found my calling, have found a community of people that I absolutely adore. And I just feel like where I belong.
Yeah, that's great. That's nice when you can find that. It just
Yeah.
makes your day-to-day life and work a pleasure to be with. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I find the
Yeah.
same. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
It's so amazing when you find it. And I suppose how I came to do what I do now is that, I because of my previous work and I had lost my menstrual cycle for months and months at a time, it was a natural progression for me to kind of go, do you know what? I'll kind of specialize somewhere,
Yeah.
and it was in menstrual cycles. And then some of my clients who, were having issues with their cycle then went, do you know what? You've helped me get over this. Could you help me get pregnant now? And I was like, okay, sure. And then it went on. And then I went on and did further training, to obviously make sure that I was supporting them in the best possible way. But yeah, just kind of became a
Very,
passion point then as well.
very good. So then, was there a particular moment in your training or the clinical work you're doing where you realized how deeply connected the gut microbiome is to hormones and reproductive health?
Um, there were kind of like two aha moments. It was definitely when we did the digestive system, and it was sort of understanding that more so. I mean, obviously, we were learning that the food you put into your body definitely, you know, signals all sorts of different messages to your body. But it was just that moment where it was like, oh my gosh. So if I eat more of these kind of foods, or making sure I have sufficient protein, that's actually going to make sure that I can produce the kind of hormones and make sure that balance is right. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And then the other aha moment was actually when we looked at the methylation cycle,
Hmm.
which was the most overwhelming thing I've ever seen in my entire life. But also at the same time, it spoke to me, and it was just like, there's something in this, you must learn it. And I was like, okay, there's something there. So yes, definitely there were two kind of aha moments during my studies for sure.
Very good. And so, okay, so when people think about hormones, we often think about things like, say, ovaries, thyroid, adrenal glands, sex hormones directly. But why should we also be thinking about the gut microbiome?
So our gut microbiome is, yes, it's the most diverse, population, let's say, of bacterium and various different things in our bodies. However, there's also interconnection and interplay between your gut, between your brain, between your bones, between your thyroid potentially, between pretty much so many different bodily systems. There's connections there. And so that's why it's so important, that we actually take care of our gut microbiome, because if we take care of that, it really will have a knock-on effect on so many other systems in your body. Like, so it's important for that fact anyway.
So, what kinds of symptoms might suggest that the gut imbalance is contributing to hormonal symptoms?
So you can have various different things going on. So obviously, and it can be so broad because there's so many different, you know, things that can be going on that can have similar symptoms. So you could have issues with transport, whether it's
Mhm.
too much, too little. Maybe you're getting hormonal flares like acne or something like that. Maybe you're having skin exacerbations like eczema.
Right.
It can be, also you can have the likes of psoriasis as well, indicating that there could be an autoimmune kind of issue going on. So there's various different things. And I suppose that's why in functional medicine, I suppose we look at the entire body, and it's not just looking at one thing in isolation. It's sort of looking at everyone as a whole, understanding what's going on with that individual, and then kind of going, okay, right, this is where we start and this is where we kind of have to go with this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's something that we keep alluding to in many of our talks that uh, people have been almost conditioned to look at one thing. We're looking through this little hole here,
Yeah.
and that's how generally modern medicine is. And as I said many times, we seem to have 1,001 different specialists there, and And what they do is fascinating. We're looking at this very specific function of this cellular function, and I'm going, okay, yeah, that's great. It's very interesting, but how does that help me as a whole and the whole body? So I totally get what you're saying there. We need to have a more of a holistic type of look there. Yeah. And all those connections between the gut issues and like you said, the symptoms of PMS and painful periods and irregular cycles and mood changes and all of that kind of thing there. So, one other thing that we see with hormonal dysregulations, especially with women, I see a lot of coming in. They go, there's a lot of constipation or poor bowel regularity affecting hormonal clearance, maybe estrogen clearance in that. Um, so, how does that affect that? How does the constipation affect that kind of clearance?
Yeah. So essentially, Mm, when we get backed up,
Yeah.
essentially, it's allowing our bodies to almost reabsorb more easily whatever metabolites are there. So, if there was a glut of excess cholesterol, for example, it would be doing that. But however, when there is the likes of estrogen that should be excreted essentially, that's exactly what we're aiming for, is for it to
Mm.
be excreted. But if it's sat there too long, the body does this kind of amazing, but also sometimes I find silly thing where I'm like, no, don't do it, don't reuptake it. And it reuptakes the estrogen, which can lead then to obviously much higher levels of estrogen in the body, which obviously we don't want. I mean, if we're trying to excrete that estrogen, it's for a reason. And
Mm.
if we're reuptaking it, we're just then adding to the, estrogenic pile essentially. And especially if we have those who have preconditions to estrogen driven cancers, for example, we definitely want to make sure that their bowels are moving to make sure that at least that part of the elimination process is taken care of. Such, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. It's getting that whole kind of detox cycle working properly. And I, I don't think people, it may sound kind of gross, but it does really reabsorb in the body. Things go from your bowels back to your liver processes it, dumps it back into the bowels. And if we're not really clearing that out, or if we got a fatty liver, or we're eating too much sugary crap, or we're drinking too much booze, it all can affect that process, can't
yeah,
it?
yeah, massively so. Yeah. And it's and even like down to, which is something that not everybody knows about, is there's sort of three phases of detoxification. There's your phase one, and it's almost like taking something and turning it into something almost more dangerous before it then takes it into phase two, and then like really kind of makes it inert then so that it can go to phase three, which is essentially going through your colon and out. And those sort of three phases, there can be various different problems with phase one and phase two, either slow or fast. And
Yeah.
if one's fast and one's slow, and it's all sort of crazy. But yeah, detoxification, whether it's any of those phases, is really important, but especially phase three, because if we are keeping hold of things, it's not a good thing in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, yeah. I think that goes with a lot of things in life. When we don't let go, we have problems, whether it's psychologically, emotionally, physically. So I think, yeah, having regular pooping every day. Let's get down to the basics. Pooping every day is important. Sweating is another great way of detoxification as well. I'm a big advocate of people having saunas.
Yeah.
I think everybody should have a sauna. Most people have, maybe almost everybody still has a bath in their house, and but nobody ever uses it. We used to do medicated baths, salt baths, and stuff. So I tell people, they say I have no room. I said, get rid of your bath, and I said, put a sauna in there. And so you'll use that much more, and especially if you're in Ireland and you have small water heaters, you can't get a full bath of hot water anyway. So
No, or you don't turn on the immersion. For the love of God, don't turn on
I
the
guess,
immersion,
yeah, that's slowly changing for people that have new homes here in Ireland.
Yes,
Yeah, so we're
absolutely.
we're getting with the times here. Yeah. So, okay. So now you're dealing with fertility. So how important is the gut microbiome in fertility for both women and men?
Yeah. So for women, let's just start with,
Yeah.
it's really important to have a healthy gut microbiome so that, again, we can kind of influence hormones. But also then there is this translocation of bacterium that essentially it's supposed, I suppose, how they think it transfers across, because it's not obviously completely confirmed, but how we think it happens is it transfers across the peritoneum from the anus, basically across the
Yeah.
peritoneum into the vaginal cavity. And that's what influences, the makeup of the vaginal microbiome. So when we look at the gut microbiome, it's like the most vast array of species that we want there. It's like it's a party, everyone's invited, come on in, everyone's welcome. But then when we get to the vagina, it's a whole different story. It's kind of like, the private party members club only or something like that. And there's a
Yeah.
bouncer on the door, and the bouncer's name is Lactobacillus crispatus. And it's kind of going, all right, you can come in, but no to you. No, actually, do you know what? The rest of the line, you go home. It's really, very picky about who goes in there. And that's for a reason, I suppose, because it is essentially a gateway. The vagina is a gateway essentially to your reproductive organs.
Uh,
So it has to be very particular in terms of what it lets in. That's why it's a really acidic environment. So we need to have, high levels of acid down there essentially to keep it safe.
yeah.
And the most important determinant for a healthy vaginal microbiome is Lactobacillus crispatus. That is probably the most important thing that you can have in there. And it determines, yes, the high lactic acid production down there. It also, protects from antimicrobials. It helps with the mucosa down there as well. And it also has anti-inflammatory implications as well. So it's a really important um, species basically to have down there.
Yeah.
Then when it comes to the male microbiome, similarly in terms of making sure that the gut diversity is as broad as possible in, favorable conditions, that we get rid of any leaky gut. And then while the mechanism of how the microbiome impacts from gut to seminal fluid as such is a little bit more tricky, I suppose, to understand that mechanism. There is definitely an impact that you can see by a healthy gut microbiome flora impacting the quality of sperm. Then, because we've definitely seen improvements between, someone whose gut microbiome might not be in the best place, or they might have I don't mean pathogen, but just an imbalance in there.
Yeah.
And by introducing targeted probiotics, in that sense, we have been able to then change the seminal microbiome environment essentially, so that makes it more favorable to having a successful pregnancy essentially.
So then, so what would somebody look for if they were having issues? Obviously, there's going to be some kind of inflammatory process in there, but
Mhm.
for somebody that might not know, what would they look for? Go, oh yeah, I have that, or that's bothering me. Or what would they
Yeah.
look for?
So for a woman, you'd be looking for either vaginal secretions at inappropriate times during their cycle, like they might be either having it all cycle or none at all.
Yeah.
And they might have discharge that is maybe grey in color. It could be malodorous as well. And there's, or there could be pain perhaps when they're having sex. There could be
Yeah.
various different things that are indicating on that. For a man, it's less evident. Sometimes it is just a case that maybe they've been trying for quite a while and just been unsuccessful. Or sometimes they could have pain on ejaculation. It could be, again, discharge being off color. It's that there's just, it can be very subtle, I suppose, when it comes to seminal microbiome.
Yeah. So I guess it's stress and nervous system regulation would really play a part in a lot of that, wouldn't it?
Massively, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's a piece that we don't appreciate as much. I feel like, a lot of people are really willing to maybe try the nutrition route and try a little bit of the lifestyle. But when it comes to kind of introducing practices that regulate nervous system, and we seem to be stress heads, I feel like all the time now. It's
I
everyone's
think. Yeah.
schedules are packed.
Yeah, I think we almost get addicted to doing things that it's almost like a badge of honor. I did this, I did that. Yeah, but then at the end of the day, you're useless. You're burnt
Yeah.
out. Yeah, yeah.
Cab-
So
yeah.
then, okay, so let's say now somebody has gotten pregnant. They've been successful in doing that. How
Mhm.
does that? how does the microbiome conversation change when that happens? So what happens? How does the microbiome change, or does it at all?
Yeah, I mean the environment is going to change a little bit, but what you want to, I suppose, make sure that you're doing is it. I suppose the majority of it comes from the pre.
Right.
Is the preparation that you've had, because when you're preparing the vaginal environment for pregnancy, it is with the intention to hold on to the pregnancy, because again, you need to make sure that the flora balance is correct.
Right.
It is going the vaginal flora is going to shift slightly. You can introduce the likes of a probiotic to ameliorate certain things, like keep the vaginal environment happy and harmonious in that
Yeah.
sense, but also to ameliorate other potential issues that may come up, because we have a population, maternal population, that is getting older. You can introduce a strain that is going to reduce the risk of gestational diabetes. You also can introduce a product that is going to reduce the risk of postnatal depression when taken in the final trimester and postpartum, and then you also will have benefits to the baby as well, if you introduce certain strains. So, the vaginal environment is going to shift, and it's absolutely completely normal. There's not necessarily much that you have to do to alter it. I mean, it's been a process that's gone on for thousands of millions of years, without interventions with probiotics. So it's absolutely fine. However, there are just some things that have developed in a modern society in terms of, like I said, gestational diabetes, etc. Those are the things that we more need to take care of, rather than the flora side of things in the vagina.
So then it's safe to say that the mother's gut microbiome plays a huge role in pregnancy, let's say immune tolerance, inflammation, and even the baby's early microbiome development itself.
Well, yes. I mean, it's all transferred from mother to baby. And I think what a lot of women worry about is sometimes in the first trimester, when they're feeling so poorly, that, they're not maybe able to eat very well,
Yeah.
and they are worried that it's going to impact the baby. Like, look, most mums have, prepared themselves, or they're in a good place before that. So they don't need to worry about the first trimester per
Yeah.
se. It's like, do you know what? When you can, introduce more veggies and, help that gut microbiome. Don't worry about T1. If you are just not feeling well enough to eat well as such during then, it's not going to harm your baby. Do not worry. It's like, let's just get back on the wagon when you can, when you feel up to it.
All right. Good stuff. So, okay. So there seems to be a lot of confusion around probiotics, and I got a lot of questions about that. But many people think one probiotic is the same as another. So,
Mhm.
why is specificity? There's another word I can't say. Specificity so important.
Yeah, I suppose, look, I kind of want to go a little bit backwards to kind of help
Yep.
explain that kind of bit. So with live bacterium, you've got like genus, species, and strain. So to help people understand that kind of thing, it's like, think of genus as a school. So everybody goes to this school. And then you've got species. So a species is the class. They're all in these different classes. So it's, when I went to school, I was in L, and then there were some of them in B, which was St. Bridget and St. Lawrence and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's the species level. But then inside of the classroom, you have each individual's pupil or student, and that's the strain level. And each pupil in that classroom, they all have a different talent. Like maybe one of them is a singer, one of them is going to be a doctor, they're an academic, or a scientist or whatever. So they all do different things. So it's really important to kind of understand that side of things, because think of it this way as well. There's a 2.3% genetic difference between ourselves and gorillas, and look how different we are, like in terms of what we can do and what they could do, and I'm really glad I don't have the hair issues that gorillas have anyway. But that's how we need to be more, I suppose, nuanced, or kind of understand better that we need to be very specific with the outcome we're trying to achieve.
Right.
So, like we were mentioning there about constipation, if constipation is the issue, or the kind of issue that's causing all of the upstream effects, then we need to make sure that we deal with the constipation, so that you actually have a clearance of all the other issues.
Right.
So, if you had eczema, for example, you would need to go for a specific strain that deals with eczema, and that's where the specificity thing comes into it. If you were having dental issues, again, you need to go after strains that have been clinically proven to exert effects in the oral microbiome to actually improve health outcomes via the oral microbiome with those specific strains.
So when
And
you
like, yeah.
go ahead. Yeah.
And I was saying, like some people might say, oh, but, I have kefir every day or, fermented foods or, various things like that. And it's like, they're all amazing to support the gut microbiome. But when we're trying to do targeted, interventions, we don't know what the microbes are in the, kombucha, let's just say for the sake of argument, that you're making in your house. And even if I was to make a batch of kombucha in my house, it would be different to the one that is in your house, even if we get the same SCOBY and use the same
Yeah.
ingredients, because it's influenced by what, maybe bacterium or whatever on the skin of the vegetables or fruit that you use, maybe the microbes on your even skin, if you touch something, what's
Yeah.
transferred, what's in the air around it, if you have pets, what water source you use. And also then if there was, God forbid, mold or something in your house, that would also influence it. So we can't be certain of what microbes are in there. Therefore, it's very difficult to use that as a therapeutic dose. It's amazing to use as a gut supporter,
Yeah.
but in everyday life. But if you are trying to actually impact a health outcome, you need to go to strain specificity.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. There's so many things to think of where we think of, oh yes, it's all the same, but there's so many things that could influence the bacterial load or the probiotic load, whatever we want to call it. And it's just like us, you know, why one thing may affect one person and another. Well, it's the environment around that makes a big difference with it as well. Yeah. So what makes a probiotic, how am I say that, evidence-based? So we talked in the beginning in the opening about evidence-based. So from your perspective, what makes a probiotic evidence-based?
So I suppose the lovely thing about live bacterial supplements that are evidence based is that they're quite a natural intervention, but there's been a huge body of work put into it, particularly over, say, the last 30 probably years.
Mm.
I mean, it started off probably with a trickle and then it kind of has grown and grown. And what we're finding is that the because live microorganisms are they're part of us. You know what I mean? Essentially, they are part of us. They've come from us.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's always a safe intervention because it's a very low risk intervention. So it means that when they go to do the likes of a clinical trial, there's less in terms of the implications on the ethics side of things, of there being issues around, exposing, quote unquote, someone to maybe this. It's not a pathogen, at the end of the day, it's just some bacteria. And there's usually very low risk of any kind of side effects or anything like that. So what we've seen is almost an explosion of clinical trials, particularly, your gold standard placebo-controlled trials
Mm.
in relation to live bacterial supplements, because they are a safe intervention, because they exert their effects on so many different bodily systems and health outcomes. We're seeing stuff in relation to reducing the progression of osteopenia to osteoporosis and, reducing the overgrowth of QT bacterium acnes in the pilosebaceous uh, glands. So, you've got these various different things that are being studied, and it's quite easy for studies to be done in a certain respect because it's easy to control the bacterium, get them from a reputable source, and then make sure that it's consistent across the board. And again, with low risk of poor outcome, essentially, or risk of
Yeah.
some interaction as such.
Yeah. So then are there situations where probiotics may not be appropriate or maybe they need to be introduced very carefully?
Rarely. It's very rare because across the board, they're quite a safe intervention. It's almost like when you have that client or patient that's quite complex and they might have maybe polypharmacy on a lot of medication. Typically, it's actually a live bacterial supplement is a safe intervention to introduce because it's not going to impact the medication that they're already taking. Because essentially, any kind of pharmacological medication usually exerts its effects on the liver. Um, it will essentially, go into the body, go into the liver, and then kind of get passed through the bloodstream because it's being passed through the hepatic portal and then into the bloodstream. So that is kind of how that will sort of sit, whereas a live bacteria will just sit in the gut. They never, travel to the liver or anything like that. They stay completely in the gut until they're excreted. So you don't have to worry about them sort of having a little fight with the liver or in around the liver's area as such, because they don't do that.
So, okay, I got a question for you, and I've run into in this in my practice as well. So, what might be happening in cases where somebody comes and they say, "Listen, I took a probiotic and I felt worse." What might be happening there?
With them, it could be just the fact that they have such an imbalance in their gut that it's almost like some people who feel worse when you give them a vitamin. It's almost like sometimes things are just so out of whack that, they feel like that. But essentially with that person, I imagine what's happening there is just the dysbiosis is quite heavily on a side of a certain bacterium. And then in order to suit them, I would actually start with food first, go really kind of good food, or sorry, I know good foods is a horrible way to describe it, but foods that's going to feed their microbiome, in a positive way. And then after a little while, introduce a supplement that would be suitable for whatever you're trying to achieve with them.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah. Okay, so here's another question. So, do they permanently colonize the gut, or do they tend to work through signaling temporary effects?
Okay, my favorite question, because there's so many people who just completely get this wrong. And in
Yeah,
fairness, I was trained incorrectly. It's because we have outdated like knowledge from
yeah,
before. So no probiotic on the planet colonizes the gut.
yeah.
Not one. If one says that their product colonizes the gut, they're lying. They're lying. I love to think of a probiotic supplement, or sorry, a live bacterial supplement as a firefighter. Essentially, they show up, they put water on the fire, and then they go away. In research studies, it looks like Bramnosis GG is probably the one that sticks around the longest, and that is up to a maximum of 3 months. So, and with a lot of the other strains, they only hang around for maybe a day or two. They're really getting excreted. So we say that they're here for a good time, not a long time.
Very good. Very good. Okay, so you work for a company called Activated Probiotics. So can you tell us about Activated Probiotics? What makes the company different from standard over the counter type probiotic brands?
So I suppose, well, sorry, Activated Probiotics is an Australian company. Our founder Blair, like he essentially, was going through his own health challenges and basically, wanted to find a way to ameliorate it through as natural a process as possible. He came across, live bacterium, and essentially it's sort of history from there. And what I think is most important about activated probiotics is that we're very much strain specificity, and using our products for specific conditions. So, like, we have a really varied range, and it can be quite overwhelming for someone when they first see it because it's like 17 products currently, and they're just going, but how do I know what's for what? And at first glance, I'm sure it's really overwhelming, but then you kind of get to know, oh, there's one for mental health and sleep, and then there's one for acne, and then there's one for cholesterol management, muscle recovery. And once you get down into kind of understanding what each of them does, then it's much easier for you to go, okay, well, with this client, I'm actually trying to achieve this outcome. And then you know which one to go for. And I think that the days of, well, I'd like to think that day is coming to an end anyway, of when maybe a GP or someone would turn around to someone and say, okay, I've given you a script for an antibiotic, go get a probiotic.
Yeah.
We need to get a bit more nuanced in terms of that, because you need one that's going to maybe stave off the diarrhea associated with antibiotic
Yeah.
use and maybe heal the gastrointestinal tract. And for that, you need the likes of a Plantarum 6595. You need Acidophilus LAO2 and Rhamnosus GG. You need so much more than just go get a probiotic. And the term broad spectrum probiotic does not exist. It's because there's a term broad spectrum antibiotic. People seem to think that a broad spectrum probiotic is a thing, and it's not. It's like,
Yeah.
or people walk into a store and go, "Give me the strongest one," or "Give me the one that has the most strains," and it's like, well, what are you trying to achieve? It's
Yeah.
that should be the always the question is like, what is it that you want to achieve? And then, we can go and get the product that actually suits whatever they're trying to achieve.
Yeah. So, another thing that's been mentioned with activated probiotics, it uses targeted strains at clinically studied doses. So, why is that important for somebody to know?
Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately, probably the least important thing about a probiotic is the dose. Well, I
Yeah.
know that sounds really weird, but unlike a medicine, that needs to be studied at doses to understand, like, is it dangerous? Is it not dangerous? All that kind of stuff. With a live bacterial supplement, because it is more natural and there's very low risk in terms of it, it's less to do with the less to do with the dose and more to do with the genomic coding, I suppose, that the bacterium has, and what again impacts or what benefits it exerts.
Yeah.
Um, so the dose, while it is studied in all of, because there has to be some form of dose when you do a clinical trial, like you can't just go, I don't know, yeah, sure, today take 1 gram, and another day another gram. So there has to be, but yes, we kind of only go to the amount that's required in order to exert the impact that we're trying to the outcome that we're trying to achieve.
Okay. Another thing we mentioned is microbac. People are listening microbac. What the heck is that? So it's a micro encapsulation technology. So why does that matter?
Yes, so that matters because, okay, essentially, microbac is our trademarked lipid layer of protection around the bacterium.
Yeah.
And the reason we put it around the bacterium itself is to protect it, but also, there are clients and patients that can't actually swallow capsules or pills or various different things. So it just means that for any of those patients, it can be opened onto, say, some yogurt or onto their cereal or something like that, and be actually ingested, in that sense. So it's a much easier thing. Plus, by protecting it, it means that 5 times more will reach the gut alive. So when people look at our products, they might go, oh my God, there's only, 3 billion in this product, or there's only 9 billion in this one. But this, again, kind of back to that, here's a
Yeah.
stronger one on this
Yeah.
shelf. It's less to do with the dose. Like I said, it's down to that strain specificity. That's the most important thing when it comes to it.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, just making sure that we're getting any of those. We call them sleeping beauties as well, because they have been freeze dried and basically put into a deep state of dormancy. So again, that microbac is going to protect them. They're also in either an alu foil pack or in a single serve sachet. It just means that they are going to be preserved for the longest amount of time possible in their little safe environment.
So that's the pharmaceutical grade packaging we mentioned at the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So then that leaves me, let's see, there was one other thing. Oh, yeah. And let's see if I can remember this. The flow symmetry enumeration. There we go. So, uh,
Flow cytometry. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So in terms of practical terms, product quality, bacterial count accuracy, why does that matter?
Yeah. So flow cytometry is essentially a laser machine with much more processes in it that I'm going to go into, but essentially it's lasers that will essentially shine like this fluoro kind of lighting onto the bacterium, determine whether they're alive or not. And if
Right.
they're not, if they're alive, they will go into the supplement. And if they're not, they will be rejected and pushed out. It just means that you get a higher count of actually proper live bacterium in the product. Also, it's denoted by BLB or MLB, maybe if it's a smaller amount of dosage. And that essentially is saying, yes, we have used, laser flow cytometry essentially to count this product. Whereas when you see the likes of CFU on a product, it's the manual plate count method. And God bless some scientists who have sat there and, counted out called conforming units. They have done that in a manual process. So bless them and thank them for for your product.
Okay, so what are some of the condition-specific areas that Activated Probiotics focuses on? I think you mentioned you had, what, 17 areas, was that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of joke around, and for any of the Irish listeners, it's like Uncle Gabo used to say, there's one for everyone in the audience. We're pretty much at that point, I think. Like there's ones for, and, starting at the very beginning. So there's ones for babies that reduces crying time in colicky babies. There's one for kids, and parents will be delighted to hear that the research shows it kept their kids in creche or school for longer. They were missing less. We have one for asthma. We have another one for mood and sleep, iron absorption, acne, eczema, cholesterol management, everything to do with your mouth. We can come back to dental. Is
Yeah.
probably my favorite thing to talk about.
Right.
We have ones for IBS, but also can be helpful with those with ulcerative colitis as well. We have one for muscle recovery, female vaginal health, which we obviously spoke about earlier, pregnancy as well. We also have one for bone density, and that one is quite an amazing product for. It's one of those ones that you won't see the benefit in your day-to-day life necessarily. You won't go, "Oh, my bones feel really
Yeah.
strong today," or something. You're not going to see that because it's not doing anything to regrow bone or anything, but it's maintaining the bone density that you have, or at least hanging on to as much of it as
Right.
you can by reducing the levels of inflammation in the body. But what's really lovely about that product as well is that it's also an autoimmune immunomodulator. So those who actually have an autoimmune condition can use it to actually balance their immune system. And speaking personally as someone who has Hashimoto's, I've actually used it to help lower my thyroid antibody levels alongside LDN. But, it's been part of my regime to do that. And having been stationary for 2 years and not moving, they've finally started to shift on
Yeah.
that regime. Mm.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. So do you see probiotics as kind of the as standalone interventions, or do they work best alongside, let's say, other lifestyle factors, nutrition?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely nutrition. That's probably, for me anyway, one of the most important things, because think of a supplement, a live bacterial supplement, like if you're using it for a specific condition, it's like a crowd control barrier. It's
Yeah.
almost like holding off other species from repopulating that area until you can help repopulate it with the good food, quote unquote good food. But the fermentable fibers and all of those lovely things that are going to help repopulate your gut in a positive way. So definitely, food is probably for me the most important thing that you can do alongside supplementation of a live bacterial supplement. But then also your lifestyle is massively important. Like your sleep is going to influence it, because your sleep will influence also your food choices as well. So that
Right.
has a little knock on effect there. And then also your stress levels. When you have a stressed gut, you're not going to have a really a makeup of a gut environment that's positive. It's going to degrade essentially the makeup of your gut microbiome. So you really need to work on that. But like I said, it's probably food is the number one thing I would say. And then after that it's sleep and stress management and nervous system management, as we kind of mentioned earlier.
All right. So my next question for you is, what are some common mistakes people make when they're trying to improve their gut health?
Ooh. Hmm. Common mistakes I think that people make is they go in with a really high dose of fiber. And if
Right.
they have maybe come from, not eating maybe the best, and they go in with a huge amount of fiber, it's actually going to have a bunging up effect almost, and it's really going to impact them. So, you know, I definitely don't recommend that. It's always low and slow, and it's also the way I try and approach a lot of other things as well. It's always low and slow. It's not like, going from 0 to 100 overnight. You're just not going to see the benefits. Plus, I think it will always put people off. They go, "Oh, well, I tried eating more fiber and it didn't work for me. It did the opposite." And it's like, "Okay, well, you just didn't do it in the right way," and it's the
Yeah.
same with so much. So I think by um titrating, or, going up slowly and gently, we can definitely improve the gut by doing stuff like that. Other mistakes is people not realizing that the nervous system and stress are playing massive parts
Yes.
in the dysbiosis potentially that someone's experiencing. And they could do all the best things in the world in terms of, the food that they nourish their body with, but if they're not dealing with the nervous system and stress element to it, it's almost like tying one hand behind their back, and just really not getting them to the place that they'd like to be at.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think in my clinic, excuse me, I think in my clinical practice as well, I see fiber being one of the biggest ones that there's a lot of misconceptions about that. And, when they come to me and I ask them, well, excuse me, what did your doctor say or what did your dietitian say? And they go, oh, just take more fiber. And I'm going, and how did you feel? They go, I felt horrible. I'm going, so why are you still doing it? Right. And it's not to say that fiber doesn't have its benefits. It obviously does. But I think, one thing that I've always stood by is digestibility of foods. And I'm going, can you fully digest a food? And just because a food is a natural and a whole food doesn't automatically mean that it's going to be great for you and that you can eat loads and loads of it. And seeing that most of the fibers that we eat are indigestible, at least insoluble fibers, and we're probably doing better with soluble fibers because it's easier to deal with. When we cook it, it breaks down. Maybe using fermentation, all those things can help to access more. But even then, you know, like you said, it's dose dependent,
Yeah.
and I know myself through my experimenting over the years with, gut inflammation issues that when I eat too much fiber, I feel horrible. Right.
Mm. Yeah.
And so I have a little bit of fermented vegetables, 2 or 3 forkfuls, and it's great. If I eat more or if I eat the whole jar, well, you're definitely not going to want to be around me for a while. It does it doesn't work. And I think that's the same thing with the probiotics, right? When you're saying they don't have to have the biggest dose to make a positive impact on the health. So, yeah, I totally get where you're coming from
Yeah.
for there. Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
think I really like, isn't it, a quote by, is it Michael Pollan? It's something to the effect of, um, eat more food, but not too much, and mostly plants. I think that's the kind of the gist of what the best, or what he says is.
Yeah, I don't agree with it wholeheartedly, but yeah, parts of that. Yeah,
Yeah, but I mean, like, I think in terms of, it's like, eat enough, not
yeah,
too much, because I think we have a tendency to overindulge now. But I think it's mostly plants. So it's not only plants, it's mostly plants. And the reason, like, look, so many things are plants. It's not just vegetables and all that kind of stuff, but it's,
yeah,
the grains and various different things. So I do think, as long as it's more plant forward a lot of the times, and we still have our really good sources of protein in there, whether it be from animal sources or not, like, I think it's a good recipe for at least the majority of us for health.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. Listen, it has to be balanced, and I'm definitely not anti-vegetable. I know there are some people think I am because I keep talking about the values of proteins and fats, and the reason say that is because one of my specialties is blood chemistry, and I'm looking at people coming in, and I'm going, geez, this person is not eating any proteins, any fats. They can't absorb their minerals properly because of that. Their gut is falling apart, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we have to be careful with, the all the different kind of diet types battling with each other and that. And again, we have to put that into perspective.
Absolutely.
But from my point of view, looking at blood chemistry, it becomes quite evident that where the deficiencies are, and we just need to keep that in balance more. Yeah.
Yeah. No, for
Okay.
sure.
So, what is one misconception about probiotics that you wish more people understood?
Oh, which one to pick? I don't know. There's so many. I mean, we've already touched on a few, like the broad spectrum thing, definitely, is probably one of the bees in my bonnet. Um, that the best quality ones live in the fridge.
Okay.
So, I have been the amount of times it has been told to me that it's like, yes, the best quality, one lives in the fridge. I'm like, no, that's not necessarily the case. I understand that, in order to protect those bacterium, they need to be kept refrigerated because
Right.
they're not protected or they're not freeze dried or the way we do our process. But that's just in order to maintain that product's viability, you have to keep it in the fridge. So that's really the only reason for that. It doesn't mean that it's better than
Yeah.
another. It's yeah, that would probably be that big misconception there anyway for me.
Okay. And then, what is one misconception about fertility and menstrual health that you wish more people understood? Is there anything different about that?
Yeah, and I don't know, this might be a bit slightly off, but it's that just because a man has had a semen analysis that looks okay on
Yeah.
paper does not mean that it's a male factor, that it is not a male factor issue.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
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 It's looking beyond that typical semen analysis that can be done by the clinic. It's, you look in behind it and look for a DNA fragmentation. That's definitely something that should be done if there are fertility challenges, for sure.
Yeah. 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 Sorry, guys, you play a part in it too. It's not all on the woman, right?
Hey, come
Yeah.
on, guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. So, if someone could do one thing this week to support their gut and hormone health, what would you suggest?
Improve their sleep. Because
Right.
if they improve their sleep, like I said, they're going to make better food choices. And by
Yeah.
making better food choices, that will have a positive impact on their gut. So if they can prioritize sleep, and for me, ideally, it's definitely getting to sleep before midnight for me. It's always like, I always feel like the quality is better. And I know in Chinese medicine, there is a clock that
Yeah.
basically says that for every hour before midnight is worth two on the other side kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So, and also because of the repair clock again in Chinese medicine, where we are repairing most of our important bodily systems between 10 p.m., onwards. Definitely getting to sleep earlier would be definitely probably my number one.
Yeah. I think that has one of the biggest shifts on our internal clocks. I always like to say to people, I say, your circadian rhythm is out, your balance is out. And I say, it's not just one clock. I say, picture that you have a dozen clocks inside your body, and we need to coordinate all the times to the same time. And a lot of people, they are definitely not on on the same time with them. So there are many different aspects that we need to deal with. But yes, I agree, sleep. Because listen, you can get away without eating right for a period of time and maybe not exercising right for a period of time. But how are you going to do when you're missing 3 nights sleep, right?
Yeah.
Or you're only getting half sleep? You can't function properly. You can't think properly. So
Obviously, the caveat for that is like, say, new parents or parents, look, don't
yeah,
worry, guys. We know, we understand, it's just going to be hopefully a short period where your sleep's going to be a bit rubbish. But then once, the kids settle down and get a bit older, it'll be okay.
yeah, yeah. All right. Okay, one last question, maybe two. We'll see. So after all your work in nutrition, fertility, pregnancy, microbiome education, what is the main message you would like people to take away from our conversation today?
um, Advocate for yourself. I think personally that too many people just let themselves be told that this is your problem or this is what you have to do, like by certain medical professionals. And whilst yes, there can be a degree of correctness there, but what I mean is more, if you feel like there's still something else wrong, or you don't feel it's the right diagnosis maybe or something like that, get a second opinion, or, look for an alternative practitioner maybe or something like that. But just advocate for yourself, because oftentimes I've seen people go down a route where, they felt, one thing and they were given maybe a medication for that. And because they had that medication, they got another medication for that. And they ended up with polypharmacy for no reason other than, let's just say, it was indigestion. And, there are ways to help with indigestion without going down the route of, say, a PPI or something like that. So, it's just, yeah, advocate for yourself. If you feel like it's either something else is going on, or it's not the right diagnosis, or you just want to explore something else, just do it. You know, don't accept necessarily what's handed to you.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that too. I always tell people, listen to your body. I said, nobody knows your body better than you do.
Yeah,
And if something doesn't feel right, probably something isn't right, no matter who that advice has come from. I had a patient today. We were going over his polypharmacy list of medications, and he was talking about one that he goes, I stopped taking it. And I'm going, so why did you stop taking it? He goes, because I couldn't breathe properly when I took it. And I'm going, well, that's a good reason to listen to your body. And his doctor didn't think it was a big issue, but I'm going, well, I think it is a big issue, right?
it's a huge issue. If you can't
Yeah.
breathe, that's
So,
really detrimental to life.
but yeah, listening to our body is good. And I always like to say, uh, look at things like, yes, breathing. Are you breathing? Are you getting enough oxygen? But ultimately, energy, I like to say, is the currency of the body. And is what you're doing increasing your energy or taking energy away?
Yeah,
And if it's increasing energy, I'm not talking about borrowed energy from coffee and stimulants and stuff
yeah,
like that. But if what you're doing is actually good for you, you should have an increase in your energy. That means on a cellular basis, things are happening, right? And I,
for sure.
I think these are all good messages that definitely to take away today. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay,
Same.
so Nikki, where can people connect with you, learn more about your work, and maybe learn more about activated probiotics if somebody is interested in researching that further?
Yeah. So if you're looking for myself, it's nikkieWnutrition.com. And if you are looking for more on activated probiotics, you can find us in pretty much every pharmacy in the country. You just might have to ask for us. And if you want to look up more, just Google activated probiotics and look up our website there. There is an EU one and an Australian one.
Excellent. I'll make sure we put that in the show notes. And I'd like to really thank you for your time today. I enjoyed having our conversation today. And I think this is a topic that not a lot of people talk about with
Yeah,
probiotics, or there are a lot of misconceptions. So I encourage people to look up the websites and the information. We'll share the info on the show notes. And as always, if somebody can benefit from this message, please share it with them. Please subscribe to the channels as well. It does help us to put the word out to more and more people, because in the mainstream, they're not really putting that out there in any great force. So this is our way of doing that. So Nikki, thank you again for joining us. And thank you everybody for joining us here. And until the next time, we'll see you on the next episode of the Integrative Continuum. Take care.
thanks, Dr. Rocker.
Thank you for joining me on the Integrative Continuum. I hope today's conversation gave you new insights and practical tools for your own health journey. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share it with someone who would benefit, and leave us a review. It helps us spread this message further. Until next time, I'm Dr. Richard Rocker. Stay curious, stay empowered, and keep moving forward on your path to integrative health.